Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Cochrane. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to this community, to this high school. I am the MLA for Airdrie East, and I am thrilled to be able to join you as our government announces the investments that we are making in school projects under budget 2026 to support students, families, and growing communities such as those within my constituency here in Cochrane and across Alberta. I'd like to begin by acknowledging my colleagues and our guests joining us here today. I'm pleased to be joined by the Honourable, the Premier, Danielle Smith, the Honourable Demetrios Nicolaides, the Minister of Education and Childcare, many school authority representatives, community leaders and partners, and everyone who's joining us here in person and on the internet. Today's announcement builds on the schools, on our government's record investment in education through Budget 2026, which focuses on planning and building schools where enrollment is growing and space is needed the most specifically in Airdrie, but definitely Cochrane and other areas. Schools are at the heart of our communities, and today's announcement reflects a commitment to making more students spaces so they can learn in modern, well-equipped spaces close to home. And I am so pleased to share with you a really great grand announcement. So let me be the first to say that our government is providing planning funding to the Calgary Catholic School Division for a new elementary junior high school in Chinook Gate, which is in Airdrie. I took that one. Now with that, it is my pleasure to invite our Premier, Danielle Smith, to the podium to share the rest of the details about Budget 2026.
Thanks, Emily Pitt. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, and a big thank you to everyone at Bow Valley High School for hosting us. It's been a pleasure to be, it is a pleasure to be in Cochrane with Demetrios Nicolaides, our Minister of Education and Childcare, Angela Pitt, MLA for Airdrie East, Fiona Gilbert, Board Chair for Rocky View Schools, and Gregory Van Dyes, Chair of Francophone, to highlight how government is investing in our kids. First, I want to put this investment into perspective. In the last 5 years, Alberta has seen an increase of 600,000 people. That's like a city half the size of Calgary. This increase also includes more than 80,000 additional students who have enrolled in Alberta. It's no secret that Alberta is facing fiscal challenges, but our government knows we have some catching up to do because of the huge growth that we've seen. And that's why last month we announced an investment of $143 million to support the creation of 476 complexity teams to help our youngest and most vulnerable students in K-6 schools with the highest complexity. Then last week, as part of Budget 2026, we announced the largest ever investment in Alberta's education system with $10.8 billion in dedicated operational funding. And that includes $560 million in enrollment funding, $300 million for classroom complexity funding, as well to hire 1,500 teachers and 800 support staff in the upcoming school year and more. Ensuring that we have the proper staff and supports in our schools is one way we're addressing the growth that we've seen in our province. But we also have to ensure that we have the infrastructure and schools needed to accommodate the growth that we've seen in our student population. And that's why Budget 2026 invests $3.3 billion to support the 161 new and ongoing school projects across the province. And that funding includes 40 new school projects that are in this budget alone. And it is also this investment into new school projects that brings us together here today. And I'm happy to announce that we're moving forward with 16 new public school projects in our smaller cities and rural areas. This includes design funding for a project right here in Cochrane, the new high school at Horse Creek. Planning funding will be also provided to new projects in the communities of Caslan, Legal, Paddle Prairie, Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, and Sylvan Lake, and for projects in smaller cities, including Airdrie, I think we heard about that one, Canmore, Fort Saskatchewan, Lac La Biche, Red Deer, and St. Albert. Together, these projects will create or renovate more than 9,800 student spaces. We're making these crucial investments to build new schools across the province to catch up with the historic population growth that has been straining our classrooms and staff. Put simply, Alberta's kids can't wait. They deserve the best education we can give them, no matter where they live. So we're speeding things up to ensure that the system keeps up so that learning and working environments are great for kids and for teachers. We promise to accelerate school construction around the province, and our $8.6 billion Schools Now initiative is on track to create roughly 200,000 new and renovated student spaces over the next 6 years. There will be lots of shovels in the ground and many grand openings to look forward to, and soon enough there will be plenty of excited kids showing up for the first day in their new school. And students, families, and teachers can count on our government to make it happen. So thank you, and I'd now like to pass it over to Minister Demetrios Nicolaides for more details about today's announcement.
Well, thank you very much, Premier, and thank you to everyone who's joining us here today. I'm thrilled as well to be here to build on last week's historic education investment, as the Premier noted, which includes a $722 million increase in education funding and 14 new school projects in Calgary. Now, building on that momentum, I'm very pleased to share details about the new public school projects for communities outside of Edmonton and Calgary. Budget 26 will provide funding to start 16 new school projects in smaller cities and rural communities. I'll take a few minutes to walk you through these public school projects in more detail. Turning first to Northern Alberta, 3 new projects will be added to the capital list for northern communities. The Northern Lights School Division will receive planning funding to begin developing a new school in Caslin to support the Buffalo Lake Métis community. As well, Northland School Division will receive planning funding to replace the Paddle Prairie School. And Lakeland Catholic School Division will receive planning funding to begin development of a new K-12 school in Lac La Biche. We'll now turn to Central Alberta and St. Albert. In Red Deer Public Schools will receive planning funding to modernize the Oriole Park School. In Sylvan Lake, 2 new public high schools are moving forward. Planning funding will be provided to Chinook's Edge School Division and Red Deer Catholic Regional Schools for them each to build new high schools. We are also providing planning funding to Elk Island Public Schools to consolidate Fort Saskatchewan High with the Rudolph Henning Junior High. As well, Elk Island Catholic will also get planning funding for a similar consolidation project they are working on. In St. Albert, we are moving forward with 2 new projects. Firstly, Greater St. Albert Catholic Schools will receive planning funding for a new K-9 school in Riverside, and St. Albert Public Schools will receive planning funding to renovate the École Leo Nickerson Elementary School. Greater St. Albert Catholic Schools will also receive planning funding to modernize the school in Legal. In Spruce Grove, the Parkland School Division will receive design funding for an addition to the Brookwood School. And in Stony Plain, we're providing planning funding to build a new K-12 Francophone school. Turning our attention now to Southern Alberta and around Calgary. In Airdrie, as my colleague Angela Pitt just mentioned, we are providing planning funding to the Calgary Catholic School Division for a new elementary and junior high school in the community of Chinook Gate. And as was already noted, right here in Cochrane, we're providing Rocky View Schools with design funding for a new high school in Horse Creek. And finally, in Canmore, we are providing planning funding to support the development of a new Francophone school. Together, these school projects will create and renovate more than 9,800 student spaces. As of today, I'm proud to announce there are now 161 school projects underway across Alberta. All of the school projects are part of our generational $8.6 billion Schools Now program. I am confident Budget 26 will build schools where families need them most, giving Alberta students the supports they need to learn and thrive close to home. Thank you again for joining us today. It's now my privilege to invite Fiona Gilbert from Rocky View Schools to share her remarks.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees of Rocky View Schools, I am honored to be here today standing in Bow Valley High School's brand new Learning Commons. I extend a warm welcome to Premier Danielle Smith, Minister Nicolaides, MLA Pitt, Chair Van Dice, and other dignitaries who are joining us here today in this beautiful Rocky View Schools. I would like to recognize the RVS trustees who are here today with us as well. Vice Chair Melissa Bowen, Trustees Shali Bazook, Sarah Roth, Fred Burley, Joanna Brownlee, and Susan Flowers. I also want to acknowledge the RVS administration, including the Superintendent of Schools, Ryan Reed, members of our executive team, and other dedicated staff. I do want to give a special shout out to Bow Valley High School. They are being our host school today, and we thank you and appreciate the flexibility and the hospitality of Principal Shane Dempster and his team here at Bow Valley High School, and for the warm welcome that we have been received here today. Rocky View Schools is encouraged by the government's continued investment in education infrastructure and for this announcement here today. Providing all students with the learning environments they need to learn and to grow remains fundamental to the strength of our public's education system, of our province's education system, as well as Alberta's economic prosperity. Rocky View Schools has experienced space pressures driven by rapid population and enrollment growth for many, many years. It is not a new thing here in Rocky View Schools. And design funding approval for a new high school in Cochrane is a positive and forward-looking step for our community as well as for the entire division. It sets in motion the essential work of designing a school that will meet the urgent needs of our students, of our families, and our community. We thank Minister Nicolaides for his partnership and the investment into student success. Spaces like this really do make a difference in the lives of children, and we appreciate every single dollar that is spent on public education. The board would also like to recognize the current and past mayor, councillors, and administration of the town of Cochrane for ensuring that the school site is ready for development. It is critical that boards, municipalities, and the province work together to get schools built. The town's support for students in this community is greatly appreciated. With this announcement, Rocky View Schools has 9 of the 161 projects here across Rocky View Schools at various stages of development. And this reflects several years of strong advocacy from Rocky View Schools. We are grateful to the communities for their sustained efforts to have their voices heard, and we appreciate the government's recognition of their needs through announcements like this. Bow Valley High School, where we are situated here today, is currently undergoing a much-needed expansion and modernization. Construction of this started back in the summer of 2024, and we look forward to its completion just a few months from now in September 2026. Once this project is finished, it will have created 485 additional student spaces here in Cochrane. However, over the next 5 years, Bow Valley again will be over 100% utilized. And this new high school approved today is critical to keep pace with Cochrane's ongoing growth. There's a construction of a new K-9 school in South Windsong in Airdrie, which is well underway. And it has been exciting to watch that school take shape as we wait for others to advance to the construction phase. We also look forward to the completion of 2 additional K-9 schools in Airdrie in the communities of Bayview and Lanark, and an Airdrie High School in South Winds, as well as a K-8 school in Cochrane's Rivercrest community just down the road from where we are here today, a K-9 in Dawson's Landing in Chestermere, and a high school in Chestermere's Chelsea community. New schools are more than just bricks and mortar. They are long-term investments in the strength and vitality of our communities and of our province. They create spaces where children feel safe, supported, and inspired to reach their full potential. And today's announcement represents meaningful progress, and we are truly grateful for it. RVS remains committed to working collaboratively with our government partners to build on this momentum and to advance school construction just as quickly as possible, ensuring that every student has access to modern, welcoming learning environments that support their success. It is now my pleasure to invite Gregory Van Dyes, Board Chair of Francophone, to the podium to provide a few remarks. Thank you.
Bonjour à tous. Welcome, everyone. As we're gathered here today, it's a pleasure for us to be here. This month is known as the month of La Francophonie, and this year has been officially designated as the year of La Francophonie here in Alberta. And so this announcement carries a particular meaningful significance for Francophone families across our province. It's an honor to be here along with Premier Danielle Smith, the Minister of Education, Minister Nicolaides, MLA Angela Pitt, and Board Chair Fiona Gilbert. My name is Gregory Vandez, and I'm the Board Chair of Franco-Sud, Conseil Scolaire Franco-Sud. Franco-Sud is a publicly funded Francophone authority, school authority responsible for providing both Francophone public and Francophone Catholic education across southern Alberta. Our situation is quite unique. We serve both urban and rural communities across a vast territory of more than 75,000 square kilometers in southern Alberta, including the municipalities of Calgary, Airdrie, Cochrane, Chestermere, Canmore, Okotoks, Brooks, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, Cardston, and the Crow's Nest Pass. So that's quite a large territory. Our role is not only to provide education in French, but also to support the vitality of Francophone communities throughout our region. For many families, access to French language education close to home is essential to preserving their language and their culture and their identity. And this is why this announcement today is so important. Our province continues to experience growth. Our classrooms are feeling the impact every day. Investments in new schools and modern learning environments are essential so that students have the space and resources they need to succeed in the future. Through the many discussions we've had with Minister Nicolaides and our local MLAs, we have felt a genuine openness to listen to the reality of Francophone education across our region. We're grateful that the government has taken the time to understand our needs and to respond with concrete support. Today's planning announcement of a new K-6 and 7-12 Francophone school complex in Canmore is a very important milestone for the Francophone family of Bow Valley, and we're grateful for that. While many steps remain to be taken until the construction of this complex, we look forward to continuing to collaborate with the government of Alberta and the town of Canmore to get the shovel in the ground as soon as possible. And this project is only one example of that commitment that we feel from the government. At Franco-Sud alone, 7 important infrastructure projects have received some level of funding from the province since the announcement of the $8.6 billion School Now program. And I want to highlight this and the difference that it makes. September 2024 is when this program was announced to accelerate the constructions of schools. And it's been 18 months since that time. In that 18 months, we have received announcements for 7 new schools. In the 18 months before this announcement, we had received announcements for 2 new schools. So that's an increase for our school board of 350% in new schools. And this is significant. We are looking, for example, at new schools in Calgary in the communities of Harvest Hill, Hampton, Panorama Hill, and Coral Springs, as well as investments in communities in Cardston, Chestermere, and Canmore. For our students, these projects mean modern classrooms, welcoming learning environment, opportunities to thrive in French closer to where they live. And this is a real issue for French education. For parents, that means the confidence that their children can receive a complete and equivalent education in their own language within their own community. And I want to stress this because there's a real choice here. Francophone parents have a right under the Constitution to educate their children in French, but is it a real choice when you have to choose on whether to put your 6 or 7-year-old child on a bus for 3 hours a day in Calgary to reach a Francophone school, or to send them to an English school in the neighborhood? It's a very hard choice for parents to do. And it's a choice that really determines whether their children will be able to be educated in French, have that identity, and be able to really be part of their culture. And as a parent, I feel that I want this culture to be passed on to my children and my grandchildren. So I'm really grateful that the choice of building more schools in Calgary and outside provides these parents with a real choice for Francophone education, where they don't have to choose between 3 hours for a 7-year-old on a bus, and they can now have a school that's closer to them. So thank you so much to the government for making this possible and allowing this investment to have a real impact. And we are seeing it every day. This government is actually walking the talk. And they announced that they were going to do something, and with 350% increase in the number of schools that's been announced for Francophone, we are feeling it and seeing it. Enfin, j'aimerais m'adresser directement aux familles francophones qui nous écoutent aujourd'hui. Les conseillers scolaires de Franco-Sud poursuivent activement leur travail afin de développer et améliorer les infrastructures scolaires dans les communautés où les besoins lui sont les plus ardents. Votre confiance est essentielle et nous vous remercions de choisir d'offrir à vos enfants une éducation en français. Ensemble, nous continuons à bâtir des communautés francophones fortes et d'améliorer l'accès à des écoles de langue française équivalentes à celles de la majorité. On behalf of the Francophone School Board trustees, our administration, and the thousands of families that we serve across southern Alberta, I would like to thank you. And to thank our province, our government, Premier Danielle Smith and Minister Nicolaides for this investment. You are addressing the growing need of Francophone education. Together, we are building schools that will serve students, not only today, but for generations to come. Je termine en souhaitant un bon mois de la francophonie à tous les francophones de la province. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you to all of our speakers. We'll now head into our media Q&A. We'll start off with questions here in the room before making our way to the phones. We'll be taking one question and one follow-up. Please make sure to state your name and outlet before asking your question. And we'll go to our first the mic in the room.
Hi there, Mark Villani with CTV Calgary. I apologize, this is an unrelated question for the Premier. The Canadian Medicare Association and the Canadian Health Coalition spoke out in Ottawa this morning against Alberta's plans for a two-tier healthcare system. They're citing the potential of longer wait times and physician shortages for those relying on public healthcare. What's your response to that, and when will this legislation all take effect?
Well, they're wrong. I think what we've observed in Quebec is that because Quebec has made their doctors make a choice of whether to be in public or private, they're seeing an increasing number of doctors go into the private system and not be available at all to do public surgeries and public treatment. We don't want that to happen here. And so our priority is the public system. We want to make sure that no one ever has to pay out of pocket for medically necessary care, and we will be monitoring it. We'll be making sure that doctors perform the same level of treatments and see the same number of patients that they do today. But if there are times that we do not pay them to work for us, because many surgeons can only get 1 day a month in operating rooms, that they'll be able to take a smaller number of private patients. And so we anticipate this will increase capacity. We also anticipate that there are a certain number of Albertans that will take themselves off the public queue in order to take advantage of that option. We expect that we'll be able to provide additional support to other provinces who are facing long waiting lists, because there will be another way for them to be treated. And we're anticipating that this will reduce waiting lists and provide better care. So we just have a fundamental difference of opinion. I believe that the legislation to enable it will be coming in this session.
I also just wanted to ask you on another different topic, wanted to ask you about municipalities pushing back regarding increases to the province's education property tax. Right now, Calgary, Airdrie, and Chestermere all facing provincial property tax hikes of at least 19%. Calgary is even floating the idea of a plebiscite to push back against what the mayor calls transfer payments. What do you say to Alberta property owners who are facing significant property tax increases due to your budget?
Well, I think property owners understand that on one hand, they pay taxes to the municipality to do municipal things like fix roads and potholes and snow clear and fix water pipes. And they also pay money to the province to be able to make sure their kids get a great education. We heard from the ratepayers in Calgary that they wanted us to keep up with growth. They wanted us to build more schools. They wanted us to address issues of complexity. 40% of the pressures on our education system are coming from growth in Calgary. When I talk about 600,000 people moving here in the last 5 years, a lot of those folks are destined for Calgary. And so what we heard from our parents and those who are very concerned about that is they want us to be able to keep up with that growth. So I would have put it into perspective that Calgary ratepayers are paying for Calgary students. Our requisition for them is about $976 million from homeowners. Meanwhile, we are going to be giving $2.24 billion in operating expenses to the two major boards. We also give additional money to the Francophone board. We also fund $144 million in charter schools, which is 100% paid for by the province. We will also fund up to $3.73 billion in new schools, which is 100% paid for by the province. And so, yes, I think education property taxpayers understand that paying a portion of the operating cost is something that they understand on their bill. I think we heard that they want complexity teams as well. So I'd ask those who are opposed now, especially those who weighed in during the teachers' strike to urge us to get a speedy resolution. I would ask that they would tell me which schools they want canceled and which complexity teams they want canceled. This is I think that they have to understand that their ratepayers have an understanding that they can do two different things, and the bill is supposed to do two different things: municipal taxes for municipal purposes, education taxes for education purposes.
Drew Strymek, Global Calgary. Premier, kind of on the same vein there. The education property tax is expected to also have a significant impact on business owners this year. Will there be any additional supports for small business owners and how they can be dealing with this education property tax hike? A lot of them saying they're going to either have to face significant challenges or even raise prices, which will make things unaffordable.
Well, I think business owners also have been asking for us to do more dual credit programs to make sure that kids come out of school job ready. And so they put a lot of pressure on the K-12 education system to do that. And we're responding. We're encouraging all of our school boards to develop those dual credit options, to increase apprenticeships, and to work with the business community on that. And so the business community also benefits by having kids coming out of the school system ready to learn. So what I would say is we have made a commitment that 1/3 of the cost of operating is going to be funded through property tax. And why is it only 1/3? Because it would be unaffordable if Calgary ratepayers had to pay 100% of the cost of education. Let's be very frank about this. Every single community is getting subsidized by oil and gas revenues. There is no community that is paying 100% of the cost of education. They pay a fraction of the operating cost. They pay none of the capital cost. And it is because of the robust growth in our oil sands and the revenues associated with that everybody is being subsidized. So I think that, I look forward to continuing the conversation. It will not go up from this point. We're going to, we made a commitment that we would get to 1/3 of the property of the operating being paid for out of the property tax revenue, and that's what's going to stay.
And just to, again, divert to another topic, Monday, that's when City of Calgary is expected to reintroduce water restrictions as these emergency reinforcements happen to the Bears Paw feeder main. How does the province consider, or how does the province plan to support Calgary as they go through this next round of water restrictions? And is the use of the emergency push notification just to ensure all Calgarians know what's coming on the table?
Well, again, that's very much up to the emergency management in Calgary. It was Calgary's emergency management that made the decision that it did not warrant using the system. So we will rely on Calgary's emergency management to let us know if they want. So you should ask them that question. But of course, if it comes to a point where they've made the determination that they need to use that mechanism as opposed to all of the other mechanisms they have, like press releases and press conferences, then that is certainly available to them to do that. And I'm pleased to see that they're accelerating the construction. And so we'll look forward to seeing what that plan looks like. I believe that our department, both municipal affairs and tech transportation and economic corridors, which also helps to build municipal or regional water service. So they have some expertise in that. I know that they're very close to watching that, and we're on standby if there's any help that's needed.
Thank you.
Is there any support specifically that the province would give them?
Well, let's be frank. They have $4 billion in their surplus fund. They have, I think, $600 million that had been allocated in previous years for capital spending. They've got the money to pay for it. They just have to make the decision to pay for it.
Thanks, Premier.
Yeah.
Jillian Code with City News. Just another one on the education property tax. Calgary City Hall, they've discussed maybe looking at the framework of taxes there. Alberta municipalities also said they would support completely looking at the framework to see if anything needs to be shifted. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, everybody uses market value assessment. Calgary uses market value assessment every year. They make a decision on what their assessments are, and it ends up shifting depending on whether their ratepayers have a higher, live in a community with a faster appreciation or slower appreciation. So if everybody wants to look at an entirely different system of assessment across the province for both municipal as well as for the education property tax, we can have that conversation. But that's the system that they use, and so we're just using the same system.
And just a second question from my colleague back at the station, just about, where do I have it here? All right. Cost of living has been rising. So from that, how do you justify tightening eligibility requirements for the Alberta Seniors Benefit?
Well, let me tell you a bit about the seniors benefit. It's a social program, and it's unique in provinces. Not all of them, not all provinces have it. In fact, I believe that most of them don't. And the ones that do, British Columbia, their threshold is $2,280. Ontario, it's $4,469, so dramatically lower than ours. And one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we don't have overly generous social programs so that people move to Alberta just to take advantage of social programs. That was one of the reasons why we knew we had to bring AISH payments in alignment with other jurisdictions, because we had heard that people were moving here just to be on social programs. We think people should be taxpayers first and should be moving here to pay taxes, not to be on social programs. So we want to make sure that those who need it, those who built this province and were taxpayers all their lives, are supported properly. But we also have to make sure that we're not inadvertently creating an incentive for people to be seeking out the highest benefits. And so we're looking at that in all of our social programs, looking at income testing, looking at asset testing. And so those are the things that we're looking at.
Thank you. We'll go to our next the mic.
All right. I'm Felix from Radio Canada. As we heard in Mr. Van Dijk's speech, that number of places for Francophone schools are growing up. How important is it for this government to invest in Francophone schools?
Well, the Francophone education and Catholic education both have unique status in our Constitution, that they have constitutional protection on where numbers warrant. And so we want to be responsive to the communities that have a large number of growing either Catholic students or Francophone students, and make sure that we're keeping up with that level of growth. And so I think what you heard from the representative from Franco Sud is that there has been a surge in demand for that, and as a result, that's the reason why we've been matching that with the commitment to build schools.
Is the government doing enough to ensure equivalent rights for Francophone students?
Well, I can leave that to the representative from the Francophone School Board to maybe answer that question. We understand our constitutional obligation, and I think the fact that there have been now sounds like a total of 9 schools that have been announced in a 10-year period. I think that demonstrates that we take that constitutional responsibility seriously.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Premier Smith, Dane Patterson, the Canadian Press. There were some students outside critical of your policies, some critical of the transgender policies, saying that they're harmful to trans youth. Others talking about the bargaining agreement with teachers in October and how that was handled. I should note there was also a smaller group who was in support and had a honk for Smith sign. So I just kind of want to get your response to the students outside who are critical of your policies, largely about the handling of the bargaining agreement and of the policies around trans youth.
Well, I think as high school students getting ready to be able to vote in a few years, it's encouraging to see that they're paying attention to local issues and current affairs. I think that's a positive sign. So I don't have any objection to anybody raising their voice on things that they care about. When it comes to the teacher contract, we needed to get kids back into school, especially high school kids who were in danger of not being able to write their diploma exams, which is an essential for getting into university. Those are the kids that were very much on my mind as we were out of school for 3.5 weeks and had to defer the final exams. So I would say that 3.5 weeks does demonstrate that we value the teacher's right to strike, but we also support the right of kids to get an education, and so we took the balance that we thought was necessary. And I think on balance, most kids are glad to be back in class, and most parents are glad that their kids are learning again. I think most teachers are happy to be back in class as well. As for trans policies, I think you're seeing a fundamental recalibration on this around the world. In the United States, I would note that 2 of their major doctors' associations have aligned themselves with our position that kids should not be receiving surgical treatment until they're adults, and we shouldn't be doing experimental drugs on children. That's becoming a very strong international position, and so I feel like we may have been first on that, but we do also want to support that when a child becomes old enough to make mature adult decisions and understand the consequences, that they're supported in that pathway. But when they're 15 years of age and younger, they're still a minor, and they have to be, there's a limited number of decisions that they're able to make until they're grown up enough to understand the consequences.
An unrelated question still for you, Premier Smith, is you've mused about taking a second look at daylight savings time and talked about how the last referendum question on the issue was a bit flawed. If your government moves forward with changes, which would you be leaning towards, permanent daylight savings time or standard time?
Well, I mean, it's I kind of like the hour. I like more sunlight at night, and I think most people do too, because we are on daylight 8 months out of the year. So going to standard 12 months out of the year would be a big adjustment for people. And so that would be one of my considerations. I think the question was a little double-barreled, which is why it was confusing. I think if you just ask people, do you want to stop the time change, you'd probably end up with overwhelming support on that, as they have in other jurisdictions. And things have changed now. When you look that British Columbia is going ahead, Yukon has gone ahead, Saskatchewan has gone ahead, Northwest Territories. I had a chance to engage with Premier Simpson in the last 24 hours, and he said 90% of his people are supportive of ending the time change as well. And so we have to keep that in mind. It sounds like down the west coast of the United States, they've had various plebiscites that have gone to wanting to end the time change. So it could just be that Alberta was maybe a little early in asking that question. So we'll be doing some consultation now to see if now's the time for us to consider it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
We have time for a couple more questions. We'll take our last one here in the room and then go to the phones.
Great. Hey, Noel Eady, Cochrane now. I want to ask questions in particular to our school here in Cochrane, the high school. You're providing planning, funding. Can you walk me through the steps? How many years are we talking before?
Let me get the minister to do that.
Yeah, thank you. The school capital process involves 3 primary distinct phases, which is the planning stage, which begins first, and we provide funding to the school division to facilitate that stage in that process. That allows the school board to begin to scope the project, ensure site readiness, and ensure those foundations and fundamentals are in place. Once that project has ticked all the boxes, it's then able to move to the design phase, where we begin, of course, the architectural drawings and more detailed analysis of the full cost implications. And once all of that work is complete, then we move to the full construction cycle. Of course, a project can move through those stages at different speeds, depending on the site, depending on utilities, whether those things are connected, permits are in order, and all of those other pieces. On average, it can take approximately 3 to 5 years for a project to move from the very beginning, from planning, all the way through to completed construction.
Great, thank you. To Fiona Gilbert, I had a quick question in regard, if I may. Your next priority for Cochrane is another K-8 in Heartland. I'm curious, how essential is it, and you had on your priority list for this year, how crucial is it to Cochrane and to Rocky View schools?
Sure. All of our projects on our capital plan, our priority projects, are crucial. The announcement today for the Horse Creek High School for the design funding, just to clarify that that has been awarded for design funding, so already the second stage, it was the number one priority. And so, yes, we will be revisiting our capital plan priorities again for this next year. We have to submit them to government by the end of March. And so that's a conversation that we're having right now around the next rendition of the capital plan priorities. As far as the school in Heartland, it absolutely is critical as we continue to see the growth. I know here in Cochrane, Heartland is one of the areas that is getting lots of growth, as well as down here in the Greystone community. So we are anticipating the opening of the Rivercrest School just down the street from here in the fall of 2028, and that will take off some of the pressures here in our community. And then with hopeful that the heritage site will, the Heartland site will get accelerated through the accelerator program that has been talked about here into planning and design and construction, so that it can be ready for students as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Glad to get an on-topic question in. We have time for one last question. We're going to go to the phones. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
We have a question from Will Vazo from Western Standard. Your line is open.
Sorry, Sam, I'm going to go off topic again here. Premier, this is coming from the opposition leaders press conference just right before this, so you might not have seen any of it, but he said that come the time of a referendum on Alberta independence, he will be actively knocking doors and campaigning in favor of Alberta remaining in Canada. You've said that you're in favor of a sovereign Alberta within the United Canada, but my question will be, will you actively be campaigning for Alberta to remain in Canada?
Well, I have been from day one, from the moment I saw the federal Liberal government get elected again for a majority mandate, and the frustration of Albertans. I've been working tirelessly with our federal counterparts to identify the very significant pressure points that have caused Albertans to lose hope. And that's why we signed an MOU in November. It's why we're having trilateral conversations with British Columbia to get a new bitumen pipeline built to the Northwest BC coast. If the opposition leader wanted to be constructive, maybe he could call his prospective federal leader, Abby Lewis, and tell him to stop talking down the oil and gas industry, and tell him to call Premier Eby and tell him to help us and be supportive in finding a new pathway. That would be, I think, go a long way to making sure that Albertans feel that they're being heard and that they're being respected by our partners in Confederation.
And then my follow-up again from his conference, he was talking about government waste, and something he said about education spending in the schools that are getting announced and built is that money is being wasted in the planning and pre-planning process and even the design process. He suggested that why don't we just come up with 4 elementary school designs, and then pick one for each project and kind of get the shovels in the ground.
Well, I'll turn it over to.
Yeah,
I'll hand it over to Demetrios Nicolaides, because we actually have developed a process within infrastructure that has greatly streamlined the cost and allowed us to, I think, build them more cost effectively than if they were being done as one-offs. So I'll turn it over to him.
Sure. Thank you, Premier. Very quickly, there's a few pieces in that I think are important to unpack. First and foremost, though, the Ministry of Infrastructure does have some standard templates, if you will, regarding school designs. Those do exist. That being said, it can be difficult to apply them because many of the sites where the schools need to go are not identical. Of course, there's a lot of different variables, the way the site, the direction the site is facing, whether it's vertical or horizontally shaped. And so there can be a lot of complexities and challenges associated with applying some of those. But again, they do exist, and we do work to apply them as best we can. I find it curious and very interesting that the Leader of the Opposition wants to move away from the current model of planning, design, and construction, because this was a model that the Auditor General recommended that the Ministry of Education employ to ensure there's complete transparency over where a project is at with respect to the construction phase, and ensuring that dollars are being spent in the most appropriate ways. So this was a shift that occurred over the course of the past few years to align with Auditor General recommendations. I think it's very concerning that he's suggesting we move away from recommendations of the Auditor General.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.